Ciao ragazzi, today I'm reviewing my first ortholinear keyboard, the XD75. This one's gone through many different modifications and it sure is something I have been looking forward to review as well. For those who are not familiar to ortholinear keyboards are basically keyboards with standard grids. When I was a kid and first started using a computer, I was always confused by two things. Why isn't the keyboard in alphabetical order? And why are the keys scattered around diagonally? Well, this keyboard finally made my dreams come true on acquiring a keyboard with a perfect grid. The XD75 is definitely not very popular among keyboard enthusiasts. If anyone dares to go ortholinear, they usually end up going for the plank or other 4x12 equivalents like the new Mini, Contra, or many unique hand-wired ones. However, some people do prefer having a bit more keys on their keyboards, even when they go ortholinear. I myself am a 75% keyboard fan, and this was the closest I could get to a 75% without getting some obscure keyboard like the Axis Is keyboard or getting a custom plate in PCB. This basically has the functionality of a 70%, as the ortholinear nature of the keyboard was able to fit more keys in the same space than the standard staggered ones. The biggest advantage of this 5x15 ortholinear is that they have the same form factor as 60% keyboards. This means that you can fit the PCB and plate into many aftermarket 60% cases. As the plate and the PCB are not made specifically to fit aftermarket cases, you usually end up missing out on a few screw holes, but with some modifications, you can fit the PCB and plate into the case quite snugly. I'll explain it later how I did it with mine, in this case the KBDFans 5-degree case. But before anything, let's check out my layout. This is my layout configured in the kbfirmware.com online tool. Since this PCB supports QMK, it's very easy to configure. The layout is much the same as a standard 65% layout, but just the middle section split off due to the extra keys the ortholinear layout has. I always wanted a split keyboard and this was the first time I could actually do it without getting a split keyboard like the Ergodox. The mods are pretty much the same as a normal layout. The bottom row is pretty much mirrored. All the normal mods are where you would find on a staggered keyboard. The middle part is interesting, however, as I crammed most of the keys I don't really use, like the minus and plus keys and the bracket keys. The nav cluster is laid out in the TNAV configuration, so it's intuitive. I usually bind these nav commands into the FN layer of my arrow keys, and these made it possible to use them without the FN keys. The left blink is actually not another spacebar, but the backspace. I only use my right thumb for the spacebar, and I always wanted backspace where my left thumb is. When I usually build a keyboard, I generally want a split spacebar configuration just because of this reason. Sadly, many Keycap sets don't really support split spacebar, so I don't really get to actually build a normal 75% keyboard with the split spacebar configuration. The PCB supports RGB underglow, although mine cannot really utilize it since I'm using the aluminium 5-degree case. It also comes with Kailh hot swap sockets pre-installed, which is amazing. Also to note, there is another variant of the same PCB with ALP support. They don't have the hot swap sockets, but the fact that there is a readily available ALPS PCB and plate combo with compatibility with many aftermarket 60% cases is amazing, let alone an ortholinear one. So if you ever wanted an ortholinear RGB underglow keyboard with ALPS switches for whatever reason, this is definitely the way to go. As an alternative, there is the Oval KB Atomic keyboard, but it's considerably rarer than the XD75, which makes the XD75 pretty much the only option to go when you want a 5x15 ortholinear keyboard. Even if it's basically the only option for a 5x15 keyboard, the fact that it comes with a 60% form factor, QMK, and ALP support is really amazing as it really expands its possibilities and customizability. Moving on to the switches. The switches I settled down for these are Kailh BOX Blacks with Box Royal springs. If you had a chance to watch my previous video, I mentioned how Box Blacks had a 70-gram bottom out force, while the Box Royal springs had a 60-gram bottom out force, and around the same as 67-gram Tealios, which actually also bottom out at around 60 grams. I wanted something weighted between Box Blacks and Box Reds, and these are absolutely perfect for me. Box linear switches are famous for their extreme smoothness compared to their price. In my opinion, they're around the smoothness of Gatron linears, even close to Tealios. They do feel quite different from each other though. They have that signature feeling of stability, as they have much less wobble than any traditional cherry style switches. I actually enjoy the stable feeling so much, especially when paired with SA keycaps. They feel absolutely amazing. In my opinion, if you're going with linear with SA keycaps, I would recommend going boxed instead of cherry style switches like vintage blacks or Tealios, because the stable feeling of the boxed linears really shine with SA keycaps. There is one disadvantage to this stability, is that if they are pressed off center, they can get quite scratchy. When you press the box switches off center, they still go down perfectly straight, with the cost of being slightly scratchier. Cherry style switches can go down slightly sideways, which can give out the impression that they are wobbly, but they are smoother when pressed off center. This is why heavy box clicky switches like box shade and navy feel drastically heavier and have that feeling of slight binding when pressed off center. The keycaps are DSA Honeywell, as DSA keycaps are capable of fitting in virtually any layout without having to worry about keycap profiles. They are thin but high quality double shot ABS from Signature Plastics. This specific set from primekb.com is specifically geared towards ortholinear keyboards and small keyboards, covering many ortholinear layouts and even staggered 40%. It will usually fit smaller keyboards, but it can only fit up to 65% keyboards, as it doesn't have any numpad keys or F keys. If you want compatibility with bigger form factors rather than ortholinear and small keyboards, head over to Originative for the relatively more standard compatibility DSA Honeywell kit. This is how I fit my PCB and plate into the 5-degree case. The 5-degree case uses a bog standard standoff position configuration. The XD75 PCB and plates do have holes in all these positions, but the fact that some of the holes overlap with the switch mounting positions make them rather difficult to fit in the case. Some people advise using washers to raise the PCB and plate to avoid the overlapping of the standoffs, but I didn't find it to be an issue. Here's what I did. If you look at this picture, you can see that there are 6 standoffs. The green arrows will fit without any problems, no modifications necessary. The red arrows point to more problematic places, as these overlap with the switches. After these 3 technically incompatible mounting spots, I managed to fit 2 of them perfectly. Theoretically, if you manage to tighten a screw to sit flush with the PCB, there shouldn't be any problems with it overlapping with the switch. Using screws with flat tops, it's possible to tighten it tight enough for the screw to sit flush with the PCB. The flat top screws were provided with either the 5-degree case or the XD75, although I don't really remember exactly. But if you do order both the 5-degree case and the XD75 plate plus PCB combo, you can pretty much expect to receive the flat top screws. One of the standoffs still didn't fit for me because the hot swap socket was getting in the way, but I'm sure it will be possible to fit it if you use the ALPS compatible PCB, which doesn't come with the hot swap sockets. This basically makes this case completely compatible with the XD75. The steel plate paired with the hollow aluminium case actually makes this keyboard sound really hollow and relatively louder than many other keyboards. However, using inside insulation like Sorbothane or foam liners should address this issue. I didn't have any, so I settled with using the keyboard as is without any sound insulators. My final verdict is that the XD75 is a great keyboard with great customizability. With a combination of a 60% layout with compatibility with aftermarket cases, ALPS compatibility, option to come with hot swap sockets, and QMK, it really expands your options on customizing the keyboard however you want. It is seriously impressive for a single keyboard to have so much customizability, which makes the elusive 5x15 ortholinear layout so easy to approach without making much compromises. Thank you for watching, and the following is a typing demonstration.